In this lecture, we're going to provide an introduction to the digestive system. And the digestive system functions to take in food and to digest the food. And so when we think about the two fundamental functions of the digestive system, it's really to digest food, which is the process of breaking food down into its molecular components. And once it's broken down into its molecular components, we can carry out the second major function of the digestive system is to absorb those molecules that we call nutrients. And once that is completed, the molecules and the portions of that food that are not digested or not absorbed are removed as just simply residual. The two main groups that make up the digestive system is the alimentary canal, sometimes referred to as the gastrointestinal tract, gastro referring to stomach and the intestinal referring to the intestines. And you can think about the alimentary canal as a muscular tube that extends from the mouth through the terminal portion of the digestive system, which is the anus, which if we look at some of these structures specifically, and we'll look at them in more detail as well, this begins by ingesting food through the mouth, moving that food through the pharynx into the smooth muscle called the esophagus, made up of smooth muscle, as well as the stomach. And then from the stomach, that food will move into the large intestine, small intestine, large intestine, and finally through the most terminal portion of the anus. The second major group of the digestive system are the organs that surround the alimentary canal. And that we just simply refer to those as the accessory digestive organs. And these organs are connected to the alimentary canal through a series of tubes, or just simply referred to as ducts. And some of the examples here of these accessory digestive organs is that these digestive organs will produce and secrete saliva, bile, as well as digestive enzymes. These all will function to assist the alimentary canal to move food through that very long muscular tube and break that food down. In other words, to digest that food so that we can absorb the molecules in that food. And so the organs here that make up these accessory structures include the tongue, the salivary glands, the liver, gallbladder, and the pancreas. So just to review some of these major structures, the anatomical structures of the digestive system, of course, we take food in through the oral cavity, and the tongue will assist with the mechanical or digestion of that food, but the chemical digestion of that food is assisted by the salivary glands. And the salivary glands, and we'll address this in a subsequent video, will function to produce saliva, and that saliva, in addition to other compounds, includes enzymes that will initiate the breakdown of that food. So through the pharynx, when we are chewing food, we swallow what's called a bolus, BOLUS, of a portion of that food, and that food will move through the pharynx into the inferior esophagus, which can be described as a hollow, smooth muscle tube, and this extends further inferior as it becomes continuous with the stomach. And what you see just inferior to the stomach and this initial portion of the small intestine is the pancreas. And the pancreas, in a similar way as the salivary glands, will secrete enzymes to assist with the chemical digestion of that food. The liver and the gallbladder, as you can see here drawn in this diagram, are two additional accessory digestive organs that will produce compounds that will play a similar role as the pancreas and the salivary glands in breaking food down chemically in the small intestine. So the small intestine is made up of three components. The first component is the duodenum or duodenum. Those two pronunciations are correct. And then the next portion of this continuous tube is called the jejunum, and the last portion is the ileum before it merges into the larger diameter large intestine. And in a subsequent video, we're going to take a look at some of these components of the large intestine. Looking at the gross anatomy of the digestive system within the abdominal cavity, we have just some terms to define here. The term viscera is a general term that refers to the collection of organs within these body cavities. Particularly here, we're referring to the abdominal cavity. Now, there are a series of what are called membranes that will provide order and support to these organs that reside within the viscera, within this body cavity. And that membrane is called the peritoneum. It is a serous membrane that, in addition to providing structure to these organs, this membrane will also secrete a fluid that will help to provide some and support the dynamic movement of these organs. The peritoneum is made up of two components. The most inner part of the peritoneum is that part that surrounds the viscera, surrounds these organs, and that's just simply referred to as the visceral peritoneum. And it's an outer layer that surrounds the digestive organs, and it's the outer layer of the actual digestive organs, but it's the inner layer of the peritoneum. The most superficial or outer layer of the peritoneum is the parietal peritoneum. And that's the peritoneum that lines the body wall and helps to anchor the organs to the body wall. Because we have these two layers, that sets up for what's called a peritoneal cavity. And it's a small potential space, slit-like if you will, between these two layers. And the visceral peritoneum, these two layers here, the parietal, the two layers of the visceral and the parietal peritoneum makes up what's called the mesentery. And the mesentery is a double layer of the actual full peritoneum that folds upon itself. And so these are two layers that fuse together. And contained within these layers are fat molecules that forms fatty tissue where fat is stored. And those are molecules that are used energetically throughout the body. Blood vessels and nerves. Remember, the digestive system, the alimentary canal, is made up of smooth muscle that is controlled by the nervous system. So we do have a neural supply to these tissues. And so if we take a look at the diagram here on the right, lots of labels here, but I'm just going to focus on the outer. As you can see here, we have the outer parietal peritoneum that is anchored to the abdominal wall. We have the visceral peritoneum, as you can see, in this very thin line that surrounds, in this case, the stomach, as well as other tissues, and that sets up the peritoneal cavity. And you can see that we have various blood vessels, nerves, and fatty tissue contained throughout this layer. Taking another look at the peritoneum and the parietal peritoneal cavity in the peritoneum, that sets up that double layer will set up something called the omentum. We have what's called the lesser omentum and the greater omentum. So the lesser omentum, as pictured here on this diagram, attaches to what's called the lesser curvature of the stomach that we'll address in the subsequent video, but the lesser curvature of the stomach is the superior curve of the stomach. The greater curvature is the longer one, and that's located on the inferior side of the stomach. The greater omentum, named because it is much broader in nature, is described as a fatty apron, if you will. So it's a large sheet of membrane that does contain fatty tissue and blood vessels, and it covers the entirety, or rather the majority, of these abdominal organs. So on this picture here, what you see here is this broad sheet referred to as the lesser omentum because it's smaller, but the greater omentum has been resected here, cut right here. But if you imagine this sheet here would continue to extend over the rest of this abdominal cavity. And once again here, the lesser omentum is defined by its attachment to the lesser curvature on the superior side of the stomach. So this ends our first video on the anatomy of the digestive system.